Hello, everybody, and welcome to, yes, another episode of DHTV.
Number 11.
Number 11. Ah, wonderful.
Legs 11.
I've lost the
Yes,
legs 11.
Here we
We
go.
don't like legs. We have them, we don't like them. Well, Dan uses his, we tend to avoid ours. Anyway, I'm Mik Scarlett, and I should be leading what will be probably another anarchic session for the next 45 minutes. I'm joined as ever with the wonderful Dan White. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Captain Mik.
Hey.
Captain Tonight. Greetings.
Very got your disability union banners behind you. Yeah, you know, get
I hadn't noticed.
on message. And of
I
course,
just
we are
had.
joined by Zek the Tech Richardson, who's running all the magic. Say hello, Zek.
Oh, he was, and then he missed. Hello. Just forget it. You jinxed it,
Anyway,
Scarlett.
he's there.
You-
Come on,
jinxed
mate.
it.
There you go. Oh, that's me. I'm big. No, you
That's
made
it.
me
Just
big.
go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't care about us. We're always here. You know we're going to be here. I am very hungover and I'm still here. So let's face it, we are troopers. But today we have what can only describe the most amazing guest, my old mate, my old co-presenter on shows like From the Edge. And generally, we go back a long way. It is the one, the only, the wonderful Julie Fernandez. Woo!
Having me on the
Hello,
show.
Julie.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Now,
Yeah.
this is, I've said to everybody on all my social media outlets, and this is where probably you and I are going to spend a lot of time talking about when I was famous, and talking about how much we, you know, people have forgotten us and how they need to remember us because we're so wonderful.
Oh,
But you shot to fame in 1992 when you were on El Dorado, didn't you?
Yeah, that's a long time ago now.
And then you went on to do Dangerfield, and then
Yeah.
The Office, obviously, which is the thing that everyone. I love the fact that whenever you Google you, it says best known for her appearances in The Office, and you're like,
never
what,
seen it.
You mean the fact that she was the first disabled person to appear in a long-running drama or soap?
Yeah.
Forget that. She went in The Office.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah,
And you've done
sure.
loads of stuff. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, you've done loads of stuff, and of course, you used to be co-presenter with me on From the Edge, although that's not on your IMB, what is it, IDBM or whatever it's called.
IMDb.
IMDb. So mainly because, of course, she's probably less more embarrassed
Even
about
though
that
you
time.
could fill it in on your own, I'm going to have to get busy this week, aren't I?
Yeah,
You've got to
that's
make
it.
your own Wikipedia
Well, you
page
definitely need to update your Wikipedia page, which, as we discussed, is full of complete errors.
I know.
And seems to miss out most of your career, which is
Yeah.
bizarre. Anyway, so what I'm going to do first is I want to say, how on earth did you, as a young disabled woman in the 90s, break into television?
So I was a student at Trelaws, which is the largest boarding school in the country for disabled students, and loved doing all the school plays. And they were really great at stuff like that. And it wasn't little plays; it was big things like West Side Story and Bugsy Malone, and it was amazing. And myself and the class that I was with, we were the first ever group of disabled students to do drama GCSEs, to the extent where they used our class to be the first ones that the examiners came and tested us to work out how to test disabled students doing drama GCSEs. Anyway, so I'd done that, loved it, but had never ever thought about doing it as a professional career. I was off to university, or what was then Polytechnic. Well, I was trying to anyway. Back then it was even worse than it is now. So I thought, all right, I'm going to do this subject. Applied to a bunch of polys, and they all contacted me back and said, no, you can't come here because of this, this and this. So I ended up going through about 4 or 5 different subjects. Couldn't get in anywhere. I went to one interview at one Polytechnic, and the person interviewing me went on a boozy lunch, turned up pissed, forgot that I was there, never got into that Polytechnic. And I thought, oh crap, what am I going to do now? I can't go into clearing, that's too difficult. And then out the blue, the BBC contacted Trelaws to say, we're looking for a young girl in a wheelchair to play this character called Nessa Lockhead in a new British soap opera based out in Spain. Is there anyone at the college that might be interested? And my name was put forward, and the rest, as they say, is history. Crazy. So it found me. I was not looking. It's
funny because that's exactly my story. I was working away, wanting to be a musician.
Yeah.
And then I was at a gig and one of my computers blew up and I fixed it while telling jokes. And there was a producer from MZTV in the audience. And
really?
said, you were really good at talking while it looked like you were fixing a toaster. I'll never forget it. And he said, would you like to come for a screen test? So I said, yeah. And the next thing you know, I'm presenting opposite Toya, doing a show about green issues in 1989. And then I went to do youth, where talking about sex and drugs, right? And all that kind of shocking stuff.
What does Mik know about sex and drugs?
And rock and roll.
Yeah, rock and roll. And then got offered the kids series that ended up the same year you rocketed to stardom, that I kind of rocketed into the public persona, which is why we ended up going around together so much, because we were like the only two famous cripples out there. So.
Yeah.
And we went to some really weird things, didn't we?
We went to a lot.
Loads of Tory party dinners where we'd be sitting next to Tory ministers.
It's him that really ruined it.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about this a bit later, but it's weird because we used to, you got lots of people talking about how there was like all this campaigning going on outside, paint being thrown and chaining yourself and stuff. But we were also on the inside, sitting next to ministers, explaining why a law for equality would. And I'll never forget going to one, and we were sort of sat near each other, and we just spent the whole time. I could hear you doing it while I was doing the same spiel, trying to explain to Tory ministers why an equality law wasn't an expensive thing, but a right thing to do, and how it, doing the same old talk we always do. About
do you think they got it?
No.
I think it was a combination of lots of things, but I just think it's funny how there we were. I mean, I don't know about Julie, but I've definitely never voted Tory in my life. Trying to be friendly to all these Tory people, going, "Oh, go on, give us a law."
It's difficult. It's so difficult.
I'll stand. He loves them.
No, it's so difficult.
You can talk.
Just to be fair, with Labour as well. Yeah.
Zek, when he joined, I don't do politics, and now after being stuck for 45 minutes waffling to us maniacs, has suddenly started becoming all political. We better watch it. You're going to have a rabble-rouser on our hands. Now, so I want to talk to you about is the fact that you were the first. A lot. We both were. What do you think about this concept of firsts? Oh, the first person to do that, the first disabled person to do that. Do you think it's helpful?
I didn't actually realise it at the time. I was still quite young, and I think really quite naive about it all. My attitude now, 30 years on, is quite different. It stuns me a little bit how much people forget, even our own community, even within the disability community, how we forget that a lot of these firsts aren't firsts. Yeah. And part of me, it makes me giggle a little bit, because I just think, oh, that's me being old, because time moves on and people forget, and it's what happens. The next generation comes in, thinks that generation's the one that cracks it, and they're the first. And at the same time, I think, oh yeah, but don't forget, because actually a lot of us went before and actually fought the fight and tried to lead the way. So yeah, it's an interesting theory, but really it's all nonsense, and it's quite interesting because things have improved marginally. You do see more disabled people on television now, but only marginally, just nowhere near as many as if you're looking at other minority groups and protected characteristic groups. And I wouldn't say it's perfect for them, but they're way ahead of the game, way ahead of the game than we are. But I've had some...
Yeah, that always strikes me as really weird when you consider the disabled community has got probably every ethnicity, creed and religion within it anyway. So representing the disabled community, you'd be representing everyone. which I always find really strange with TV executives when they always seem to dance around the issue of disability every single time. And it's just totally boggles the mind from my point of view why they just cannot get this purely simple action of getting more representation on the television when every 2 years there's another launch of another decree of something else to say, yes, this is...
You mean another talent search? Surely not.
Every 2 years, another thing comes up from ITN or Channel 4 or BBC saying that, we're going to push for more diversity and inclusion in what disabled communities here. And then it happens again 2 years later. And it's just like, what is the sticking point? What is the real issue here?
It's not just about that as well. It's not just about getting disabled people on TV, but it's about the types of characters that we're playing as well. Because if you look traditionally, a lot of the baddies are people that have disfigurements or mental health issues, or they're missing a limb, or it always seems to be that, or we're the brave, heroic, wonderful individuals that climb the mountain, and aren't we like, oh, they're all marvelous, or a Paralympian. And I'm sorry, I am no Paralympian. But that needs to change. But I think until the likes of the David Prouds of this world, the people that write it, the casting agents, the producers, the writers, when there's more disabled people that are in the production side of things, I think that's when things will change. Because it does need to be that, I think that we need to be representative in the same way as everybody else is. Because at the moment it's like, oh, here's the little crip, show them to be that little bit of a story, and then we move on. And I think it's really important to change that narrative. So while we have got better, it's so slow. And I think it's a mixture of different things. I remember when I did Dangerfield, they changed the story. So Sean Maguire and I were meant to be in a relationship, and the producer came to me at the end of the first day of the shoot and said, oh, well, we've had a chat, and we don't think that you and your character would date him because he's not disabled. And I'm like, no, hang on a minute. So we had this whole conversation, and the producer turned around to me and went, well, now listen, I want you to be grateful to me for employing you, because you disabled people put off the viewing figures, and people don't want to watch you. So I've had to fight the upper echelons of the BBC to have you lot on my show, at which point I then went back to my hotel room, called my agent, said to her, look, tell him to shove it where the sun don't shine, and I'm not walking back on set until I get a written apology, knowing then we had another 3 days of filming to do. But I think that's the nonsense. I think non-disabled people really struggle to come to terms with the dealing with disability, because they have these assumptions around disability that aren't reality, and that's what they write about, and that's what they're explaining.
The thing is as well, though, when we were doing it, because this is before social media, there used to be a thing called a panel, and if there were more than 8 complaints sent in by letter, your show went to panel. So we would regularly get people go, well, I don't want to watch that while I'm eating my dinner. I don't want to watch disabled people, those horrible things, while I'm, putting my kids to bed or whatever. So our shows did tend to get complaints more, but it was like, what it should have just been is, well, I mean, unless it's a legitimate complaint, it's just torn up, because by then people have started to ignore the racist maniacs that would be like, I don't want to see those people on my telly. But we were still, so it was a real big barrier, because you only needed 8 people to Dear BBC write a letter, and it meant you went up to the big wigs to be sort of, oh, well, should we have this on? Is there something we've done wrong? And
Mark Mayer's just made a very good comment down there. He's put about Liz Carr in Silent Witness.
Sure.
Now, for me,
the thing is, right,
she was a character. She wasn't. It didn't feel like she was just a token wheelchair person, like you see on EastEnders will through, and like Strictly seems to do. Well, we've got to have someone who's disabled. So who can we have on and do that? It seemed to me, and I don't care about all the politics of the whys or whatever. Liz was a massive game changer for a lot of people, because she played someone who wasn't playing on her disability. She just did what she did, and she did it amazingly as a character.
Of course, you've got to remember that Liz actually had to fight that corner. It didn't happen naturally. Just like Julie had to fight her corner. Liz started off being a little character and then worked with the writers and pushed the program to get her, and then tried to say, let's make it so that I'm not just this little wheelie that comes in and goes, I found some evidence, but actually has a personality and a husband and all of that. So I think, as Julie said, it is about getting the industry to listen. And it's funny because I was going to ask you about your horror story and hoping you were going to tell me the Dangerfield one, because it's scary the amount of them we've got that we had to fight tooth and nail to be given the same opportunities because of this discriminatory idea. I mean, I remember a nameless TV executive who worked at the BBC. I went to see them about presenting on a show that was prime time, and he said, look, I've got to be honest, I'm not having any effing cripples on my show. And that was like, and you know, we, in a way, it was quite nice.
You got your baseball bat out and your kneecapped him and went, come join our club.
But that'd be funny. It was quite nice because what we normally got was, oh, you were brilliant, we're definitely going to use you. And then you never heard from them again. I mean, how many? But yeah, I won't go too much into horror stories, folks, but it was definitely more of a struggle. Let's say that. But what?
But it still is in some ways, in that, for example, a little while ago, I did a Radio 4 interview, and we were talking about disability representation. And I was saying, you know, we were talking about how non-disabled actors more often than not are playing the roles of disabled characters, and they're so few and far between anyway, and that's unfair. So I'm like, and so within the interview, I spoke to one of the other actors that was involved in the interview, and I'm like, you're white, would you black up to play like the character of someone that has a different coloured skin to you? And he said, no, of course not, that's disgusting, it's racist. And I'm like, exactly, you're absolutely right, but why is it you feel it's appropriate and okay to crip up, but you think it's racist to black up? And he's like, yeah, but actors have a right to act and trial a whole load of characters. And I'm like, no, hang on a minute. You can't have one rule for one minority group and another rule for another minority group. So in actual fact, are you saying then you could take the role of as a black actor, if there's a black actor, he could play the role of a disabled person. Could I, as a white female disabled actor, black up to play the role? No. So, you know, you can't have one rule for one and everything else different.
I think that the big, do you know what, it's funny because I talk about this a lot with my wife Diane, and we say that the only other group that really gets it like we do are the trans community.
Yeah.
Where normally you see a male actor will play you know, a trans man, and then a female actor will play a trans woman, and you're like, but could you not have found a trans actor to play this role? And it's sort of, and we always get but it's acting. And the other thing, of course, is the flashback scene. We've got to be able to have a non-disabled actor play the disabled person so we can chart their journey to becoming disabled. Well, what about those of us that were born this way? Thanks. Do we not exist?
And actually, more and more now, I'm having conversations with companies, and they're talking about using, because we've advanced so much in terms of filming and technology, that they can CGI and do all sorts of really interesting stuff where they can, if they have the right budgets, they can still use a disabled actor and do what they do technologically to make that person appear non-disabled at the beginning of that journey.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I always find it really boring and poor writing. There's quite a few tropes, and one of them is the journey thing. And it's like, do you really, you know, I mean, someone was talking to me recently about, is it Hollyoaks? Someone's lost a foot in Hollyoaks, and it's like, oh, here we go again. And I think we're back to this history thing. If people learnt the history of disability in the media, they wouldn't keep repeating the same storylines. I mean, you know, as far back as an early Neighbours episode, someone falling off a roof and becoming disabled, or Nasty Nick in EastEnders, you know, becoming disabled and then suddenly learning to walk again, as you do with the broken spine.
I think the only one that didn't make a recovery was the guy in Emmerdale, wasn't it?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, he stayed in the wheelchair. But incidentally, the one on Neighbours, I remember, was the most offensive, disgusting inspiration porn I've ever seen, because I remember on the Christmas episode, he actually stood up out of his wheelchair and everyone applauded.
To be honest, I mean, Julie and I.
Dear God, it's like inspiration porn. It's festering throughout the media industry right around the planet. No industry in any country can seem to get this right. It's like a global pandemic of ignorance and stereotypes.
I mean,
and the reason they can't. I mean, Baptiste. I watched Baptiste, and in the latest episode, there's a British actress who plays. She's become disabled, and you can tell when she comes in her wheelchair, the way she's pushing it's naturally so wrong. It looks like she's only been given the chair 10 seconds before.
Yeah, and it doesn't fit her frame, doesn't fit her waist, doesn't fit her hips. Yeah.
Do you remember that way that big event that we did? And it must have been about 93. You were right at the peak. I was famous. We went to do a massive thing at Sadler's Wells to all the media about portrayal. Yet another conference. You know, people think, oh, let's have a conference. It's like, oh, not another one. And I know we were discussing this, saying that the thing is, wheelchair users look a certain way. They have a body that shape, you know, our shape changes, our physicality changes, the way we move in a chair. And that is all part of the thing that we bring to a role that actually a non-disabled actor can't. You know, even when they go, oh, my left foot, you think, well, yeah, but you're talking about one of the world's best character actors who spent so much time perfecting that way of playing that he ended up really hurting himself, right, to do it. And yet, even then I knew a couple of actual actors with CP who could have played that role just as well, and he could have played the dad or a friend or something. And it's weird how we've been saying this for so long, and that even now, as you know, we see things trying to get better and everyone going, yes, we're going to do more. And it's like, yeah, but you're still making the same mistakes. I stopped acting because I got fed up with being offered roles. You know, when I started, I was playing kind of confident. I remember playing a shop owner in The Bill. I was, you know, a boy racer in 2.4 Children. I was just a bloke in a chair. And then I started getting scripts for Suicidal Man. I can't stand it. Why don't you leave me, wife? Because now I'm no longer a real man. You must want to go and find a real man who can satisfy you. And I remember the final one was going for a part in a film where I had to jump off the roof to commit suicide of a hospital. And it was like, hospitals don't have roof access for this very reason. And it's really funny because Wolf, which is a new series on Sky, this week had a scene where he stopped someone jumping off the roof of a hospital. And it's like, you can't gain access to hospital roofs for this very reason.
That specific reason. Yeah.
Yes, because if you are newly disabled or ill or something and someone says to you, that's it, folks, you might go to the roof and jump off. It's part of it. And it's something we know as people that spend quite a lot of time in hospital.
And don't have lift access.
Exactly.
To the roof.
Exactly. Lifts to the roof. Bad idea.
Is that why you're doing yourself off?
One question I was going to ask both of you is that one thing I've always wondered about the industry itself. Do you think the reason that a lot of disabled people don't get cast in the roles of, say, a disabled character or a character with a disability, etc., is because they're not a name, and you know how shallow the industry is? They like to have a big name to sell the film. Do you think?
But a lot of people don't start famous massive, do they? You know, you've got to go through the process. You do, you know, like a lot of actors, you do The Bill, then you do a bit of EastEnders, then you do a bit of Corrie, and then you build up a little bit more, and you build up a little bit more, and you gain more experience. We don't have that opportunity because we're dealing with predominantly non-disabled people who will go, will they be able to get around set? Is wardrobe
a cobbled street on Coronation Street? It's cobbles. It's ridiculous.
We won't mention that. We won't mention the fact that no one ever mentions on Coronation Street. Not these bloody cobbles again. If I was Sherry Lee, I'd be going on every week going, do you know what? I've had enough of these bloody cobbles. They're driving me up the bloody wall.
But that's just, It's just one of those.
That's why I don't act.
So how would a disabled person ever just get the chance to be thrust in?
Well, you know what? It's funny. My next question is career advancement, because I think this is the big thing that has stopped. Brilliant, thank you, Dan. Brilliant. You read my mind, psychic. So we've been doing this already enough time. We can all see what's coming, because I think that's the thing that means we're still at this point where you've got this new generation of presenters coming up and actors coming up now, and everyone's going, oh wow, and everyone in the chat has been listing all the people in the soaps that are new. There's that actor that's in this one and that actor. And it's like, yes, but the problem is, will they have career advancement? Will they continue a career and build and build and build until they leave? You know, we've got Liz going off to the States to star in a film. And it's not, you know, will that build or will that be fizzle? Because without sounding too bitter and twisted and like, oh, but both Julie and I were massive. We were superstars. And then along come the next career, the next talent search. And then Matt Fraser and another generation comes up, and then they drifted away. And then Addie came up, and then Addie, bit longer, bit more of a career, but still not, it's not been up and up and up. And what can we do to make sure that there is a career for this generation?
Well, I think Julie was right. Get people in at the top end. That door needs to be firmly pushed open, because that's where it is. I mean, you look at the new Director General of the BBC, another middle class, able-bodied white guy. This is where it all starts to go wrong. It's people who just have no interest or even experience of life put into these positions, like an old boys club. When it comes to dictate, they're literally dictating what we should be watching, not how life actually is. So I think Julie's absolutely spot on there. It's got to change from the top down, but it's how we get in there to make that change.
Writing, like Julie said,
the writing. It's the production that needs to change. So what, you know, like being famous and being an actor is not the be all and end all of life. It is just as good. You know, why can't you be the camera person? Why can't you be the sound person? Why can't you be the script director, the writer, the editor? We need to get more disabled people into the whole of production. Once, you know, if you have a casting agent that's a disabled person, by nature, they've got a script, they've got these characters that they've got to fill, and they go, okay, well, this character, this mum, and there's no reason why they can't be deaf or a wheelchair user or any of those things. And you never even actually have to mention the disability. The disability is irrelevant. It just so happens that they have a disability. So, you know, and that really, just things won't change until, in my opinion, and I've been doing this a long time now, it's the likes of the David Prouds that will be the writers, the directors, the producers. That's when the decisions, that's when it changes. And then eventually people will say, you know, like, but the Purple Pound is worth a lot of money.
We're not going to go on about the Purple Pound again, are we, Julie? We've only been doing it for 30 years, haven't we? It's terrible, isn't it? Dude, we've been doing this, we've been saying this to them for so long. You know, what is it, 249 billion in the UK spend and 1.4 trillion globally. We say it and we've been saying it. But to be honest, I haven't even researched whether or not those figures are still up to date. You probably find it's even more now, you know. And and it's, what is it, 20% at least? 15% of the world globally are disabled. And that's also counting people in countries where maybe a lot more people aren't ready to admit that they're disabled and come out like, you know, we do here. So it's probably meant to be more likely to be about 25% of the globe is disabled or older and gaining impairments as they get old. And yet our stories aren't told. And I always think the story of Alien is the one that needs to be remembered. Ripley, the character, wasn't written for a woman. It was written for a man. And they cast Sigourney Weaver because they thought it would add something and she was the best person for the role. And look at what that did. Look at what they did to the way women were perceived in film. Look at that. It changed science fiction. It changed film. It created this character that was iconic and kept coming back time and time again. And it's exactly that. It's saying Well, it doesn't have, yeah, of course, cast us to play the disabled role. If you've written a disabled character, please cast us to play it, because we will play it realistically. We won't be spending 25% of our acting trying to look like we sit in a chair, or the way that someone who's visually impaired looks with their eyes. You know, we won't be going, oh, I'm trying to be blind here. Get a blind actor to play a blind character, and therefore they will do 100% of acting on the character, and not be permanently thinking, am I doing this right? Because a number of times you watch characters and you can see them suddenly go, well, hang on a minute, better be a bit more disabled, because they've suddenly forgot, you know, or suddenly someone starts moving their legs in a wheelchair and you're like, hang on a moment, weren't you meant to have a spinal cord injury, and now suddenly you're moving your foot? It's little. It's a miracle. Hang on a minute. And you know, we were saying about how our characters suddenly they go, oh, inspiration, look, I'm cured. Well, the thing is, do you want to be playing a wheelchair user in a soap for your whole career? No. So you either leave or you get cured, because you don't want to be doing this in 5 or 10 years' time. I mean, the only person really is, isn't it someone from Neighbours? One of the older characters lost his leg and doesn't, so he plays an amputee even though he isn't an amputee. And he's a perfect example of someone that will be limping in some shots.
Oh, Paul Robinson.
And then not in others, because he's completely forgot. Hang on a minute. Oh, hang on a minute.
Stephen Dennis.
And it's you know, they're probably the only one I can think of who isn't disabled, who just went, oh, I don't care, it's only an amputation, no one can really see it. So, but everybody else kind of goes, I've got to go, I'm going somewhere else to get on with my life, because I can't play this character on wheels or whatever forever. And I think that's why the other thing they miss out on, that's why there isn't the longevity. Because if you cast a real direct disabled person, they're not playing disabled, they are disabled. It's part of who they are. It's part of.
We promise not to recover.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now, we've said all this, right? What I want to know, and I think this is important for our wonderful viewers who can also comment, why is it important? Why does it matter if the media get disability right? And anyone can answer that.
Absolutely, because it's the audience. The audience are predominantly disabled. You've got more cases of people being diagnosed with mental illness day by day. You have anyone, like you said, anyone can become disabled at any minute. I mean, you look about 14, 15 million disabled people in the UK. That's a big lot that's a huge chunk of audience figures. That's huge. And like I said, the community is richly diverse in talent and stuff. And of course, it's important, because every other community gets their say in the media that they consume, apart from the disabled community, who are always left on the periphery. It's almost, in my opinion, it's ableist practice in that way. You've got people paying their license fee and they're not seeing representation. Like the show that you and Julie did back in the day. That sort of thing needs to happen again now. Yeah, there needs to be a communal program like that
for ages, but From the Edge is needed now.
Yes, it is. It's absolutely.
I mean, I'd love one day to make
the lifestyle program. It's got to happen.
I'd love to make this more like that. So we do this bit, and then we also on Disability Risers TV make shows about stuff, and we go places, and it can be serious. I mean, Julie and I used to do really serious stuff about, you know, kind of really grim shit, and then we'd go. I mean, remember the time we went and did archery? We'd never done it before. I can't see nothing without my glasses, so I'm like, we just spent an afternoon shooting arrows and stuff, and that was to show that you could go and do archery that no other show had done, and you know, and. I remember going skiing with the British Paralympic team, you know, and I'd never skied before, and it was to show that you could do it, and it was.
I think it's also important because, sorry, Mick, just to butt in. This is my confession. I'm a huge Strictly fan, and last night on Strictly, the chef has been paired. He's been paired with Johannes, the first male dancers, and he said. On live TV, this is so important because if I'd seen something like this on TV when I was younger, I might not have felt as awkward. Yeah. Now, that's the same for disabled children. To see disabled characters, it's seeing themselves in these people on TV, that they're represented. Forget us. It doesn't matter about us. We're old and grumpy. But these youngsters need to see themselves represented.
Do you know what? It's funny, right? Because doing a kids' TV show that I did, and it was quite irreverent, and I was Mick, so I wasn't a normal TV presenter. So and loads of people that I know now that work in the media said watching you made me think I could do anything, and I know it went the same for Julie, and I know that every generation, the one or two people you see have made a massive impact. But I also think it does stuff for older people, like, you know, Zek, when you became disabled, if you'd have seen yourself on telly a lot, you'd have known what to expect, and you wouldn't have been only listening to what the doctors say, which tends to be quite bad. And that's why character and why it needs to be written by us, because most of the characterization that we see in drama follows that tragic, horrible trope, because drama writers who aren't disabled are only going to believe what society tells you, which is when you're disabled, your life is over. And
all I saw was Beyond Boundaries. I thought I had to go and drag myself through the Bolivian jungle. I was really confused.
So I never got that. That program was the bizarrest thing. I mean, I think that was the beginning of the end of good disability telly, because the idea that, well, what we're going to do is get them all to drag themselves across a jungle. I mean, it's like, to be honest,
get 10 people to drag you through the jungle.
Yeah, it wasn't even getting yourself across. It was other. Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to be dragged across the jungle, as you do every day. But it wasn't highlighting the fact that getting across London is quite tough. Yeah. Getting a job's quite tough. Finding a house that's accessible. That's the stuff I want to see. I don't want to say, oh, hello, I'm nearly killing myself in the jungle. I mean, it might be up your street. You might like jungles. But at no point could they go, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Which...
oh, dear, that's why I think the show like this, like we talk about here, is so important to be on television now, because television is an essential in itself, a public serving broadcasting outlet, and it's not doing that. It's not serving the public in that respect for the disabled community. Yeah. So if something like this was on there now for Emily's generation coming along, they'd have everything, all the information they need, all the lifestyle choices they would need, and hopefully that would feed and wider through the industry as a whole. So I think
more than that, as well,
broadcasting outlet, it's just failing terribly. Yeah.
But also, like, you know, me and Em, as you know, as you're, you know, witnessing, Em, I'm now Em's style guru, and I'm helping her punk up.
Yes, he is.
Now the thing is, right, when I was presenting youth, which is what Emily would be watching now, she wouldn't be watching kids' TV, she'd be watching youth about bands and music and fashion and all that. I was on that as a presenter. I wasn't going, hello, I'm disabled. I did some of that, but I did other stuff. Yeah. She'd watch that and go, oh, I like his jacket. I might get a jacket like that. I didn't know you could spike your hair like that. Oh, cool. Yeah. She wouldn't need to contact Uncle Mik to find out whether or not, you know, how to make her clothes punky. It would be on telly. And I think that's another huge... Now, we're always moaning about what's bad. What are they getting right? What things do you think at the moment they're doing right?
I think they are getting it right. We're seeing a lot more disability on TV. We've got deaf actors on not Holby, what's the other one? Casualty, EastEnders, CBeebies, my grandkids watch. I've seen some disability representation on there. Even disabled weather presenter, isn't there somewhere? She's born with a limb impairment.
I went for that. Apparently, I'm too outrageous to be on BBC News.
I think good wise is Ruth Madeley. I think Ruth's doing great stuff in her career.
Yes, Ruth is wonderful. Her stuff. Did you the Terry Pratchett thing?
Go for it. Go, Dan. Go. I'll mute him. Go.
No. All I was going to say was because Ruth is such a good actress and such a good friend to all of us anyway. But she's just added a part in an audio Doctor Who drama. You know, geek out and all that. And I was just reading Doctor Who magazine with an interview with her, and not once does it mention her being a wheelchair user or a disability. Just actress Ruth Madeley has come on to do this. We are so excited. And I thought that was just so refreshing. It's just a geeky outlet I love, can get that so right, and yet the mainstream can just get it so bad. But her career is ascending, and I agree with Mik. I hope it's going to come to the point where it doesn't curve off like many of them seem to do, because now's the time they just need to curve up and curve up and curve up.
Just got to say, Mark Mayer has just said, this year at the London Fashion Week, there's a whole lineup of people that use wheelchairs. I modelled at London Fashion Week in 1996, and Julie and I did a fashion item for the Times supplement. And I think the year before, where we were sent off to be all dressed up, and they gave up on me and just let me wear whatever I was wearing, and just said model zone, model zone, model zone. But so again, it's about history, because if you don't know that London Fashion Week had a wheelchair user as a model in 1996, you think that having a wheelchair model now is something special, and it isn't.
But what is it about us and our community that we so easily forget and don't maybe give the respect to those that have come before us? Why is that, do you think? Is that
Internet.
just because the media...
Internet. I don't know about you, but everything I own is on VHS. I've got boxes of tapes of me on telly. And the BBC have encoded everything about disability on, it's all available, but you can't watch it. You have to work for the BBC. And I think that something that would be really important is Channel 4, ITV and BBC admitting that they had a back catalogue of disabled talent, because one of it is the fact that if they admit that in 1992 they hired the first disabled actress to appear in a regular soap, then it would have to be, then why the bloody hell is it still so bad? If they deny their history, they can go, well, we're trying to do better than we've done before, and it's like, well, no, you aren't, because at one point every single channel on television, I mean, there was only 4, but they all had shows featuring regular disabled presenters. So it wasn't a big deal. So I think that's the thing why people forget. It's not our community. Of course, young people don't know about old duffers like us, for God's sake. You know, I'm not ashamed to say I'm 56. You know, most young people think, what? Oh, so I'm nearly dead. They don't want to know that, you know, they want to think that they're changing the world. But the thing is, the industry should admit that it has dropped the ball on occasion, like every time. And then it would then be making up ground. If it keeps denying it's made mistakes and it's let people like Julie slip and not have that career trajectory, then it means that it might happen to Liz, it might happen to Ruth. And it's why I know Julie does it. It's why I always do it. I bang on about history, because if we let them say it never happened, then it never happened. I think that's
And what do we as a community need to do to ensure that we all know about who came before us and give respect to not just you and me, but lots of other people?
I mean, people forget
we as a community need to do to support.
I mean,
because
before us,
we're just as bad for not supporting our own, really.
I mean, before us, there was Nabil Shaban in Doctor Who, 70s. I watched him as a kid.
Yeah,
you know, he was a total hero. There was Jag Pla, who was acting in things. There was all the presenters that worked on the show called 1 in 4, which was the original disability show on the BBC, and that included a guy called Chris, who had profound cerebral palsy, and everything he said was everything was subtitled anyway, because it was an inclusive. I mean, that's another thing. We used to make a show that had a BSL interpreter, subtitles, audio description, had a disabled presenter that found speech difficult, and yet he was a main presenter. So, you know, and this is the 80s. This isn't even like the 90s when we were doing it. This is the 80s, folks. So yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I suppose one of the things that you and I ought to do, Julie, is get all our VHSs out and encode them and put them on YouTube. To prove we were there.
Katie's found you, Mick. Katie's found you the BFI library.
Yeah.
That's not the BFG library, by the way, BFI.
Well, I think encoding yourself, put it on YouTube is a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it was digitized, we could share it and everybody could see, because it just gets forgotten, doesn't it?
But do you think, Mick, and you, Julie, that television back in the day was a bit more experimental, a bit more, not when Channel 4 first started, a bit more open-minded, a bit more, you know, I don't really care, let's do this, a bit more experimental. But now it's become so rigid and tight and straight.
A bit more Ben Elton.
I hate to use the word, so conservative. Sorry, Zek. But do you think that's part of the issue?
I don't know, because there's so much shit on television. It is unbelievable, honestly. How some of these programs are commissioned, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I have no idea. And there's a lot of darkness on television as well. Have you noticed how much there's to do with psychological murders? And
I like darkness.
Like all of that.
I like darkness.
Do you?
It's my soul. My soul appreciates its representation on TV.
Brilliant. I guess, I don't know, maybe you would think that in this day and age, being that there's so many channels and there's more money in it, and the technology advancement has changed, that they would explore more. But they don't seem to have done.
Don't you think it's weird? Because I remember when the proliferation started, one of the things they said to people like myself was, well, this will be great for your career, because if the mainstream, you know, terrestrial telly won't book you, then you'll get on the cable channels. And I was continuity presenter on Nickelodeon. I was a chef on living TV when it first started. And now we're going to go into the kitchen with Mik.
Have you done the shopping channel, Mik?
I haven't done the shopping channel.
Yeah, wow, that's an experience.
Yeah, but what the thing was that actually what happened was we have more channels but less presenters, because it's the same people doing everything, and you get the same show on every channel now.
Yeah.
The one with Henry Cole doing I'm going to find secondhand stuff and do it up and sell it. Well, that's on every channel. It's the same bloody show with the same presenter, and it's like what? Yeah. So
Sarah's found a plank of wood, and with £300,000, she's turned it into a bungalow.
Yeah. But it is, telly's too safe. I think you're both right. Television these days is too safe. And you think the competition the BBC have got now, they'd up their game a bit because they can't rely on the license fee forever. But television is too samey and it is too safe. That's why people watch it. Emily doesn't watch live telly at all.
Yeah. I think it used to be really experimental. I think also that it wasn't about equality and inclusion and quotas. And it was, Julie was the right actor for that role. And I was just a gobshite who was good at presenting. Do you know what I mean? And it was like, well, let's do it. Let's see what happens. It's worse, we'll just, if it's rubbish, we'll get someone else to do it. Do you know what I mean? It was, whereas now, there's lots of money involved. Everyone's very nervous. They're also nervous that social media will kick off and, thousands of people will be calling it woke or whatever. So I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna wrap up soon because it's nearly time to go. He says, keep an eye on the clock. Julie, what I'm going to say now is, what are you doing now? Are you still doing media, or do you have your hands in other pies? I know you do, but I want you to tell us all about what you're doing now.
Well, I've always had my hand in other pies because I learned very quickly that I could never earn a regular enough living to pay the bills in order to stay in it. I am, I've just done I've had a very small scene in a new Steve Merchant drama. So I was down in Bristol a couple of weeks ago doing some filming. I've got the role of a British comedy movie. It's brilliantly funny. We just applied to the BFI for funding. So we're waiting for that. But what's really great about that as well is I'm involved as their disability advisor. So, I did a complete script change with them. I went page by page, line by line, because you could tell it was written. It was great, but you could tell it was written by non-disabled people who hadn't got the experience of disability. And it's the subtlety of language, and it's the way they describe what a character is going to do within a scene. So, you start to change those and tweak those little things, and it makes a massive difference. So, yeah, still involved. They're like all the auditioning process and stuff. But I had a business. I started a craft shop and teaching centre, which I ran and sold few years ago. I work doing disability. A lot of it is to do with disability. So I work within the charity sector, talking about disability, equality and control and advice and training. And, it's all about disability in some way, shape or form. I'd like a bit of a change. I think I'd really like to get into animal rescue. No idea how to do that, but I'd love to do a little bit of animal rescue and support.
Just go and pick the cat up off of the street.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've been there.
Great, that's great, Julie. That's fantastic.
Couldn't you could contact the old bionic vet, couldn't you, and say, hey, come on, there's got to be a show there. Let's get disabled pets presented by the bionic pet and Julie Fernandez. I want in there too. You see, I've always said that I would like him to operate on me, because if sod surgeons, get me the bionic vet. Because, they're fixing little things and making tiny little bits of metal for legs.
Do you need your little thing mixed? I need my
little thing mixed. Yes. You know what, Zach? We managed to get away with the whole show without talking about sex. And
if you've got a floppy cock.
We've reached the end of the show. Woohoo! And so that's great. There you go. So that's the show, I think, for today. We are 4 minutes over time, which isn't too bad for us, because normally we can waffle on a bit. We may waffle on a bit after we go, but you don't get to see that bit. So that's probably where we'll get to talk about sex. I've got to say a wonderful thank you to Julie Fernandez, who, let's face it, we could have a whole show about what we got up to in nightclubs, really.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Anyway, and
I need to press that broadcast.
Yeah, that's
fun though, wasn't it?
That's for DHTV late. And again, thank you so much to my wonderful co-presenters, Dan and Zek, who, of course, this time, because it was my show and we're talking about the media, were quite quiet. But next time, I'm going to make sure that I sit there with my mouth firmly buttoned shut.
Never happened.
So they can get a word in.
Never happened. Never in a million years.
Yeah. And I'm gonna play a lead role in Hollywood.
What, Paul Hollywood?
It always goes like this at the end. We always kind of go a bit woo. It's because we realise we've got to the end of the show. And so, with that, folks, I suppose we should try. Have a wonderful Sunday night. Have a wonderful week. Next time, who's leading it next time?
I am. It's me.
What's the subject?
Beekeeping.
Disabled bees. Brilliant.
Yeah, I've made prosthetics for my bees.
Is it disability? No, it'd be disability.
Disability.
Yeah, look at it.
Honey. Almost there, honey.
Oh, dear. So, that was the world's worst wrap-up there, I feel. But anyway, there you go. This is probably why I'm not working in the media anymore. So, with that, we love you all. See you all again in a fortnight. And with that, thanks to Jules, thanks to Dan, thanks to Zek, and thanks to you for watching, dear viewer. Until next time. Mwah.
Bye.